This is Rachel Shatto with Pride.com, and today I'm speaking with Tyler Cornack, director of the new anthology film, Tiny Cinema. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I am such a huge fan of Butt Boy. It is the movie that I love to recommend to my friends. I take great pleasure in recommending to my friends who can handle it. And now with Tiny Cinema, I can do the same thing again.
Great. Well, it's very nice to meet you too. And man, that already makes it so worth it. It makes it all worth it. I haven't talked to anybody that's seen Butt Boy yet today, so it makes me very happy to hear that.
Oh yeah, I love it. It's such, and I think what I learned watching this film is I think I kind of am understanding your lane as a filmmaker, and I think what you're doing is unlike anyone else, and I think it's really exciting. I appreciate the subversiveness and the humor and the boundary pushing, but it's different because it's sort of, you make jokes that people would assume to be base or gross out humor, but you do it with such a straight face that it is almost like elevated gross out humor.
Great. That's exactly what I mean. You worded better than I ever could. It's exactly what we're trying to get. It's gross out. I would even say stupid gross out humor, but you can tell the person telling it might not be stupid. Maybe. Right. And I think we definitely are going to get into that with Tiny Cinema, because I think that this movie is working on a lot of levels. Thank you.
But first of all, I think we need to get the elephant out of the room. Between Butt Boy and this film, as a filmmaker, you have a bit of an anal fixation.
Right, yeah.
What is it about the human anus that you find so inspiring?
I don't know. I don't even know if I really do. This kind of came about, Butt Boy came about in a weird way, and it's the same. These have the same origin, both these movies. It's from our comedy sketch group, and they're both based on sketches. And Butt Boy was just one of hundreds of sketches, but we just thought it would be funny if it was turned into a movie. And I guess I do have a butt thing. I don't know. I'm trying to think about it, but it's not a conscious thing. I mean, I think it's part of the brand of what we're sort of doing after Butt Boy. It's let's expand that. And I think what we were trying to do with the anthology version is just, let's try to have more laughs throughout it and show people what we can do in different avenues and almost genres, and break that up and just make it a little bit funnier on the nose, let people wink at the camera a little bit more. And I think that's what it is, and butts just so happen to get in there sometimes, as do a lot of gross out things,
I mean, butts are funny, let's be honest.
Yeah, they are. I did not expect it to become, a part
your
of
brand.
My life. A part of my life like this, but here I am,
Sometimes the art chooses you.
Yeah, exactly.
So your films kind of thrive in this place that I like, which is discomfort, where it definitely pushes the audience a little bit. What is it that you hope the audience experiences when they go and see a Tiny Cinema film?
This one, just that. I want them to laugh first and foremost, and then feel pretty uncomfortable in a way that they maybe haven't before in a movie, and or an anthology movie. Anyways, that's the hope, and I think that we achieved that. I'm still figuring it out. I think we want people to have fun in it as well. We want it to not take it too seriously, because we did not take it too seriously. We just wanted to create these little stories and run crazy, and Epic and Dread were so great to let us run crazy. That was a big part of why it is so crazy. And I think we want people to talk about it a little bit. It's not very deep to us. It's just sort of these, I'm sure there are themes that people can find within it, but we didn't set out to do that with this. This was sort of, I mean, it is there for sure, but this was sort of an exercise in, let's just be funny and play in genre and just have a blast with it, I guess. So.
Oh, well, I mean, I definitely am, guilty of putting my tinfoil hat on when I watch films.
Well, I love that. That's my favorite part. That's my favorite part of anything. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, because I think on the surface, the film does kind of like touch on some things like, more base things like necrophilia or sexual dysfunction or, daddy issues. But at the same time, I kind of felt like even though we were all kind of a little bit in on a joke, you were actually getting at some deeper things like toxic masculinity, exploitation, the power of friendship, which I think is a really important theme in one of the segments. So was that more of a happy accident, or was there some design in that?
It's so funny as you're saying it, there's way more design in it than I remembered. Because everything you just said was discussed beforehand. I think it doesn't get much deeper than that. I think those, like the themes that you just said, were what we had in mind, especially with Edna. That was very, we wanted that to feel very specific to a female going through something and her independence and all that stuff. The power of friendship was something I said while we were shooting it. That's what this story is. Everything you just said was brought up, so it was conscious beforehand. We just didn't, we weren't specific of like, if there's something in the background that means something. You know what I mean? We didn't get too Kubrick with it.
Right.
It was just, those things were there for sure. And I think silliness did come first. It was like, let's just make this as funny as we can. But also, yeah, that stuff was there. I'm learning. You're educating me, which is great.
Well, I mean, I that's kind of what I mean when I was saying it's like elevated gross out, like it plays with these tropes and sort of disarms you in a way with these tropes. And then you kind of come away with it with a deeper theme. And I don't think it's like prescriptive, but I feel like it's a really good mirror about some of these things. It's weird. I hadn't thought about it as Edna as like, it's kind of an empowerment film to some degree.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the way we saw it, too. I mean, she realizes, what she realizes in the end. And like, there's some hope for her in the end,
Yeah.
Which was kind of the idea, but...
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and it is it's one of the happier endings in it. I mean, there's a very happy ending in one of them.
Yeah, quite literally.
And is this kind of your take on the Twilight Zone? Because we get kind of the tiny cinema equivalent of a Rod Serling character sort of guiding us through this.
Right, yeah. I mean, that was it. We told him Rod Serling. This is our version of Rod Serling. Like, it is, yeah. It's our take on the Twilight Zone. We talked about that the whole time too. We wanted even like I think in the beginning when the movie first started, we even had a theme that sounded way too similar to it. It's like, all right, that's got to go. But yeah, that was it. And it's just based on our comedy content. It's like, let's mix our comedy content with the Twilight Zone and bring it into this thing. And that's sort of what it was. So.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're a big film lover, film and television too, apparently. Like Heat was a big influence, and Butt Boy. Can you talk about some of the influences that you drew from for this anthology?
Yeah, it was all over the place. It was really fun because they're all different chapters and they have different influences throughout. But like Reanimator was a big one with Edna, since we were just talking about that. Let's see. It was kind of all over the place. We even had, in my mind, the opening chapter, the game night was sort of, just a lot. It had Shining elements to me when they're in the kitchen and we're doing the dance, the meltdown. It's a lot of different things. It's always so hard to think of specifics because it's all over the place. Because what we really wanted was you to get when you watch each chapter, you get a sense, you can just feel this nostalgic thing, or there's a reminder of a movie, but it's not like the most on the nose we get, I think, is Reanimator. Because you have the thing there and you're reanimating someone. But everything else was sort of like a mix mash of different things, and it's just more of a feeling that you get when you watch it. And you're like, oh, I've been here before. Or when I was a kid and I would watch horror movies in the 80s, I remember this sort of tone and feeling, especially in the last chapter. That's what's on my mind now. But in Daddy's Home, when he goes into the house, it feels sort of even R.L. Steiny at times.
Yeah.
But an adult version of that, or I'm doing a horrible job at trying to think of
no, you're not.
specifics, but I've had too much coffee today. But I'll just say it was that. It was a feeling that you get of nostalgia if you're a horror lover or whatever lover. You feel that throughout the film, and I think we did achieve that. A lot of people have said that. So
yeah, I mean, I can feel that in your films for sure. But you definitely have your own voice.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we were talking about game night, and there is one of the things that I think, I don't know if it's throughout each of them, but there is sort of this motif that comes up where it's like taking these jokes or these cliches almost, and then taking them to the extreme where they get to a place in horror. Like That's What She Said joke. This is that. If that was a horror film, what would that be? Is that something, like, I'd like to know about sort of the inspiration for these when you're writing these. Are you like kind of coming up with these ideas and then expanding upon them, or just tell me a little bit about your creative process, I guess.
Well, that one in particular, that was a sketch that we had already done years ago, and it was a 1-minute version, and it was called That's What She. It was sort of the same thing, but we had 1 minute to do it, and it was just way more low budget. But when we're writing this stuff, it's always different. It's always like somebody will have one stronger idea, or they'll have a scene in mind. Like for Bus, for me, it was, I saw that shootout sort of in my head, that big cinematic shootout, and it's like, well, what's the dumbest thing? What's the dumbest angle for us to get there? And it's gonna make this big shootout seem all the funnier if we can just make that thing so stupid. And it just comes from stuff that we made over the years, like just figuring out that's sort of our algorithm with stuff like this. It's like, take the smallest thing and stretch it into this bigger thing. And yeah, they're all different. I wrote this with Ryan and Bill, who I did a lot of my comedy stuff with, and yeah, they would come in with ideas, I would come in with ideas, and we would meet in the middle and sort of see what happens, you know? And it's a lot of fun. We just like collaborate. And also, one more thing too, like That's What She Said one, it's so our humor, it's hard to explain, but it's like, if we were to be at a bar having a beer, right? And we're just talking about, somebody would almost say a That's What She Said joke, which is an old dated joke that shouldn't even be said anymore, in my opinion. But we would go down this rabbit hole. It's like, rather than talking about that, what if one of us didn't understand what that means? And we would just go into these like crazy scenarios, and we're just joking around, hanging out, joking around. And that's sort of what all this comes from. It's just conversations when we're hanging out, and yeah, that's it.
That's so cool. I love it. I mean, if I was gonna like give somebody a sample of your filmmaking, and like say they're not convinced, they don't want to watch Butt Boy, and I'm like, you're crazy, but let me show you this one thing. I think that might be the clip that I would show, because it like really illustrates that humor that you have, and just like how weird and uncanny that these things go, but with sort of a straight face to some degree.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
that's very nice. That's very nice. Thank you.
So, yeah. I guess my question is, because you live in this sort of like uncanny place, do you imagine that Tiny Cinema and Butt Boy exist in the same universe?
We talked about that a little bit. I think at one point it did, but now I don't know. I like to think that Butt Boy is a little bit more human and grounded, but I will give you a little tiny Easter egg. Okay. There are some, when we're sitting at the bar with the friends, and he's telling the story about how he can't, Detective Fox from Butt Boy is there just for a second in the background. You'll see him at the bar. Him. Yeah, so that's when, at one point we were playing with that ideas more, and then we were like, oh man, like, we actually were gonna do it way more. We were gonna try to tie it in more, but it was COVID. So we had all these problems with getting actors to come and do it. And that's literally what it came down to. So there's parts of it where we're like, totally, this is the same universe. But then by the end, I kind of even forgot about it, to be honest. But then by the end, we're like, is it? I don't know. That's just the truth. I'm being totally transparent, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, I exist in Butt Boy, and then I exist in two different ones, and that, like, we kind of tried to throw wrenches in it. Like, Edna's in the first chapter at game night as well. She's at that party in the background, kind of. We wanted it to be sort of like, what the fuck? How does that work? and not fully explain it, you know. I know that takes some of the romanticism out of it, but
I kind of interpreted it as that this was kind of a very self-contained world. So like there were actors that crossed, but in my mind, they were the same characters.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's interesting to know that that was the detective, because I recognized him, but then he shows up in the sort of mafia one, and I was like, oh, it's that character. But it's fun to know that was actually an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again on Tiny Cinema. I think it's really fantastic. Like I said, I can't wait to show it to all my non-normie friends who can appreciate it, because I loved it.
Thank you so much. This was so nice. It was great to meet you.
It was great to meet you too. I can't wait to see what you do next. Thanks, Tyler, for taking the time to chat with us today. If you enjoyed that interview, be sure to subscribe to Pride's YouTube channel and visit us at pride.com.